Hello, everyone, again, and welcome to another episode of Lemongrass Roots, where we talk about all things SAP and SAP surrounding. And today I'm really excited to have with us a bit of a superstar in the world of enterprise AI. We've got Nils Janus from Covestro. Nils, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Eamon.
So Nils is the Chief AI Officer for Covestro. And today we're going to talk a bit about his background, what he's seeing in the enterprise world with AI, and specifically the journey he's on with Covestro. So maybe if we kick off, first off, Nils, if you don't mind, by just maybe stepping back a little bit and talking about Covestro's AI journey. And you've been on that for a while, but where did they start and where were the grassroots of their AI adoption?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back several years. So I joined Covestro early in 2018 with a very, very unstructured plan of evaluating whether big data or machine learning or data science or whatever it was called at that time, whether this could prove valuable for Covestro. And I took up that challenge. I put together a team and started looking for where in this very special, highly regulated industry these methods can prove valuable. And this is what we've been doing ever since. You've mentioned it, Eamon. In the beginning, it was more grassroots activities, like looking for collaborators who are willing to do an experiment and give this a shot and see where it takes us, to then over the course of the last about 2 years, growing super exponentially in terms of now we need to make this thing even bigger since the value has been proven and have to make this an enterprise-wide activity rather than a bit of a niche, a bit of a nerdy type of separate activity to our day-to-days.
And did you kind of notice a bit of a flip in the narrative internally at any point where it sort of switched from that science project type thing to applicable value add use cases?
It was in several domains once the first tangible use case was implemented. Because prior to that, it was all math and geeky stuff and people saying, oh yeah, we can do that. But then people actually seeing in their domain, for example, a machine learning model optimizing something in our chemical plants and seeing that it has a positive impact in metrics that relate to them as a plant manager. This kicked off a bit of an avalanche of people saying, okay, now that I've seen and have proof that it works, now I want to be a fast follower. Now I want it as well. And we've seen that across different domains, right? I've mentioned production, we've seen that in sales, we've seen that in finance as well. So it was really about generating that first proof point in a language and in a KPI framework that people understand and can relate to.
That's really interesting because I think we see the same pattern with a lot of technologies, is that on paper everybody gets excited about them, but it's only really when you see it in your part of the business that you can start to not only understand it, but start to think about how else you could use it.
So precisely, and that was, it was an early design choice for us. We had the freedom to ask ourselves as a group, how do we want to measure success? And I will tell you that my initial hypothesis was, because a lot of us come from academia and have a background there, that I was expecting an answer from my colleagues like, well, publish 2 or 3 papers a year and having X many citations on my papers, this would be really good. But much to my surprise, everyone homed in on saying, well, it has to be about economic value generation. Because if it were about academic achievements or papers, we would have had to stay in academia. Now we're in a private enterprise, and in private enterprise, the best proof point is that you show a positive, measurable contribution to the P&L.
And that seems to be the thing that all enterprises are striving for with this. And certainly, as I talk to other customers, that's really what they want to know is what does that look like? And of course, it's different for every customer and everybody who's using it based on their own business. But of course, you took it from that into something much broader within Covestro. And what I find fascinating about talking about this with you is the scale and the breadth that you're beginning to push this. Can you talk a bit about how you started doing that? Obviously you did the grassroots bottom up, but you also engaged the senior execs. How did that go, and what can you tell us about that?
So, as you correctly said, for the first couple of years, it was mostly grassroots and creating these proof points across different functions and different fields at Covestro. And then at the end of 2023, we had more structured discussions with Board of Management and with our Chief Strategy Officer on how do we get this to a strategic level to also put out top-down initiatives or top-down commitments in addition to the still existing grassroots activities. And we can talk about how we did strategy development a bit later, but one of the most critical elements was we've devised a format that we call AI briefing, which is a 4-hour session individually for every member of the supervisory board, the board of management, the direct reports of the board of management, to sit with them in a one-on-one or 3-on-1, actually, educating them about what this whole thing is, what Covestro has already done, what those proof points are, and then with them individually for their functions and their businesses, discuss how to implement the AI strategy for them, how it would be value adding for them, allowing them to ask any sort of questions that they still might have, allowing them to voice any concerns that they still might have. And this created a very, very positive movement across Covestro because, yes, a top-down ambition has been voiced, but it was not just a top-down ambition. It was coupled with these intense briefing sessions and discussions for instantiating it in the respective domains of every executive leader.
Mm-hmm. And which I think is something I haven't really seen a lot of, is this idea that a structured approach to getting that kind of stakeholder buy-in. But of course, I'm sure there was a recurring question about what is this, as you say, economic value in my area of the business. Were you able to answer that, or did you find in those conversations they started generating ideas themselves?
It was both. I mean, as you can imagine, there is a bit of a normal distribution in terms of how excited the individual is. Some were really, really excited and very, very open. Others had more questions that they would like to have answered. What we had done was develop a top-down enterprise AI potential for Covestro, both with external support and also from our own field research and studies that we've done. And the most relevant fact when we discussed that then with each executive leader and board member individually, every one of them kind of agreed on the order of magnitude. So that was a very, very important thing. It was not to, the second digit after the decimal point, but it was like, okay, roughly this is what's in for Covestro if we go about it really from an AI first, no boundaries thinking perspective. And that was really important. For some of the leaders, they had very, very tangible ideas that were sometimes even more ambitious than our own in terms of giving autonomy and decision autonomy to these models. Some were more reluctant because they still wanted a human to be accountable in the end. And both is fair and both is fine. And actually seeing that spectrum of different opinions at the end of the day allowed us to reflect and improve our approach to how to make this a holistic exercise at Covestro, rather than saying, this is the process, this is how we do it, get on the train or get lost, which likely would not have had a positive impact.
Oh, for sure. And I suppose that's the truth, is that everybody's learning still at this, both your team and the execs in the business as well. So there's always, so long as that expectation's set, there's always a bit of room for refocusing and realigning. So of course, a big thing for people listening on this podcast, they've all got, like Covestro, they've all got SAP as a core system. And without getting into SAP's AI strategy, obviously from a corporate point of view, the data in SAP, the processes that it runs with your enterprise are all critical to how you adopt the AI, or what AI is going to do. How have you found dealing with an SAP team, non-SAP teams, when trying to bring all of this together?
I see a lot of value in allowing teams who have worked successfully in an established paradigm to continue working in that established paradigm. And when we talk about SAP or large-scale enterprise systems, what I mean specifically is there is no reason, even in the AI era, to change that business processes reside in these large enterprise systems. There's simply no reason to change that for now. There is no reason to let data records, historical data records, proof points, and audit trails continue to reside in these systems. It's great that we have them. What we do, though, is we put a lot of AI functionality on top of it. So when we go about from a user perspective, and it might seem a little bit like heresy, but very few people actually enjoy interacting directly with these systems, right? People don't want to launch SAP GUI. They don't want to remember a transaction number. They don't want to key in 15 mandatory fields, of which 14 could have been derived from their Active Directory account. Why people still do it is because they have a desire about a specific outcome. For example, they have a desire that a purchase order is being filed. And what AI allows us to do is to say, well, just voice that desire to what we call Covestro Virtual Assistant. And Covestro Virtual Assistant takes care of it for you in all the backend systems and large enterprise systems like SAP. And this establishes a completely different interaction paradigm between humans and machines, where it was more a human system interaction in the past, and it's now shifting to human agent interaction more and more.
Which is a really good insight. And you touched on a couple of things there. Let's double click on them. The Covestro virtual agent. Again, you've talked to me about this, of how that's becoming a sidekick, an agent, a helper for all employees within Covestro. Can you maybe expand on a little bit and where you see that evolving to?
Yeah. We've started building what would nowadays be called an agentic platform almost 2 years ago. And the reason we did it was in this desire-based paradigm that I described, which some in large enterprises get to experience, that is those who have a personal assistant. We interact with our PA by telling him or her, hey, would you please be so kind to file that purchase order for me? Which is a great interaction paradigm, but it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale for tens of thousands of employees. And this was one of the early visions to say, hey, let's make personal assistants available for everybody, regardless of hierarchy, regardless of tenure, regardless of the function, personal assistance for everybody. So this is the vision we had in mind when we set on this journey. And then we looked at, well, what do personal assistants do for us? Yes, they learn from our interactions. They get to know us. They interpret some things that are maybe not as clear-cut as we would like them to be. Sometimes they plan and think ahead, which Covestro Virtual Assistant can't do yet. But based on these primitives, we then designed Covestro Virtual Assistant, made it available to everyone at Covestro, and we are currently at a saturation of about 30% of the white-collar workforce interact daily with it at Covestro. So it has really become a colleague, really in the truest sense of someone you ask for help, someone you ask for, hey, can you do this for me? And because the capabilities are being expanded over and over all the time, people are naturally drawn to coming back because they see it's a lot more efficient, it's a lot more hassle-free for them.
I think it's it's fantastic. I mean, I think it's something everybody would love to have, and but I totally get how how that could play out in this scenario. I mean, one other thing that you talked about is the agentic framework.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me when we met about how you want to not just have Covestro agent, but partners bringing their agents along into the party as well, and how you start to see that's how you start to consume services in the future, which again I think is a great insight. So again, if you don't mind, just for the listeners, if you don't mind just expanding a little bit on where you see that going as well.
Absolutely. One of our big initiatives is to leverage the autonomous coding capabilities of AI that exist right now to actually generate and own more source code than we have owned in the past. In the past, we've operated in a strict pay and pray paradigm as a large enterprise. We paid money for SaaS or for enterprise systems, and we prayed that our voices would be heard. And what we start to see is a lot of the functionality can be produced by autonomous coding agents already. This works on a smaller scale. Now, in a perfect world, for example, with someone like Lemongrass, we would love for you to make agents available for that framework that are that specifically capture the expertise only Lemongrass has, because we will never be as good as Lemongrass in your business model. You are the best in this particular business model. The only thing we need to ensure is that we have agent interoperability, and this will, for both sides, present a tremendous increase in speed, tremendous drop in cost, and will even allow to question some of the established business models between large enterprises and large software vendors, because my prediction is that this will change radically, and that faster and more nimble specialized software providers who are able to capture their knowledge in these specific agents will actually outperform the monolithically set up enterprise system developers over time.
Which I think is, an incredibly disruptive but exciting thing. And certainly, within Lemongrass, we look at that as a great opportunity. And I'm sure, Covestro do as well, that not just the ability, as you say, to get access globally to amazing skills, etc., but to be able to respond quickly to changes. As new ideas come out, plugging those into your network, to be able to consume those. So yeah, I mean, I think it's almost as a vision, it's super exciting. But let's get back to real practical outcomes. So obviously you've been running this program for a while, and your trajectory, as I said at the start here, has been really impressive. But let's talk about some real world use cases. I mean, can you share some examples
Sure.
with the listeners of what you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. So one particular use case we're tremendously proud of that finally went live last year in 2024, in the summer of 2024, is we've launched the first fully autonomous batch production line in a chemical plant ever. So we have multitude of different AI models here that optimize the production, that judge when production quality has been reached, that allows us to, in most cases, get around physical testing and just push our finished products to the tank and start the next batch. So something that we've never seen before in an industrial plant as complex as a chemical plant.
Mm-hmm.
So this is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
Why does that matter for us? Because I was talking about that balance sheet impact earlier, right? We operate highly nonlinear processes stacked on top of each other. And leveraging the capabilities of AI allows us to shorten production times while being still in spec. Shorter production cycles means more yearly output out of the existing plant, which then translates through margin into EBITDA impact.
Wow.
So this is something very, very core to what we do.
Mm.
On the maybe more unexpected end of the spectrum is something we've done with our treasury. Together with our treasury team, we have trained a model to predict the actual liquidity demand of Covestro on a daily and then on a 1 to 3 month horizon, so much better that it allowed us to lower the liquidity lines we hold at partner banks by a sizable amount while keeping the risk profile invariant for Covestro.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, lower liquidity lines leads to lower cost to our partner banks.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is a P&L impact mid to high single-digit million euros a year.
Wow. And that's fascinating. I mean, I think it's, it really comes to life when you start talking about those use cases. And I guess that's what I'm hearing from other customers is, they're still trying to land one of those. And it's phenomenal to hear of how you're doing that at scale across the entire enterprise. So I think maybe let's move towards the end of this chat. Let's try and summarize a couple of the key takeaways. So, you've said about starting grassroots is really important, getting people to understand this. Obviously, the top-down engagement has been really successful. And I guess on the back of the successes you're having now in these real use cases, the momentum's picking up as well. But what would you say to other customers that maybe are further back on this life cycle? What would you advise them do? The exact same process, or what could they do tomorrow to kick it off in their enterprise?
So one component that has proven extremely effective is invest into a risk-based portfolio of ideas, because not all of them will play out. Not all of them will materialize, which is perfectly okay. So don't go looking for this one sure shot where you then sink 18 months into it and have to declare victory. Come up with a dozen or 2 dozen of ideas, follow every one of them, and if after 2 or 3 months you see they're not going anywhere, kill them off and focus on those that prove more successful. Secondly, I am fully convinced that this is a skill that needs to be internalized at every company. It is so core to your operations that by only relying on third parties for something that might disrupt your existing business model so deeply, you will fall short. if you are unwilling to at least build a small team of 2, 3, 4, 5 people who really own the topic, whom you can fully trust, who drive this for you. With these 2 elements in place, I think most will be off to a very good start. And then let the colleagues jointly experiment and kill off those ideas that don't prove valuable and fully fund those for future rollout or for global rollout, then an expansion that have proven successful.
Great insights, Nils. I mean, I always enjoy having these chats, and I have to say, there's no doubt for me that Covestro is a leading light in this space. And congratulations to you and the team for what you've done. I look forward to hearing more about this in the future. We'll certainly keep in touch on it. But for now, I want to thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing your insights. And I'm sure we'll see you back in Lemongrass Roots in the future.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me, Eamon.